Now, ageism is something we often think of happening later in life, yet it seems that the problem is much more widespread.
A poll carried out for BBC Radio 5 Live has found that 1 in 5 people aged between 18 and 34 have experienced it, while people approaching retirement were most likely to have been discriminated against.
We're joined now by Liam Beattie, who's a youth activist, and Peter Day, who won a case of age discrimination against his bank earlier this year. Good morning, to both.
Good
morning. Lovely to see you both on the sofa. Peter, tell us your story. What happened to you?
Well, what we wanted to do was pretty straightforward, and my wife and I had sat down. We were doing a bit of forward financial planning, and we decided that we have 3 daughters. The youngest is yet to be married. We thought we'd put some funds to one side in anticipation of a future wedding date. And I said, well, our mortgage is due to be paid off at the end of January 2017. Why don't we retain a bit of the maturing endowment policy funds and continue that part of the mortgage on for another 4 or 5 years? So we agreed to do that. Seemed fairly straightforward. I phoned the bank and they said, well, I'm sorry, we can't make a decision now. You'll have to go through a full mortgage process, which I thought was odd. But I had a long phone call with them, lasting 5 minutes. Didn't even get into my income. As soon as they knew how old I was, 59 at the time, they said, I'm sorry, but we can't lend to you. We don't lend into retirement. I said, but I'm not retired. I'm retired from corporate life, but I'm now self-employed and continuing to work and generate an income. And at the age of 60, I'll have significant pension income as well. But that didn't seem to matter, and to cut a long story short, I complained. I went through their internal complaints procedure. A senior risk manager upheld their policy and their decision not to lend to me. So I said, well, I'm pretty indignant about this. So I took it to the Ombudsman, which is pretty easy to do online, and put my case to the Ombudsman's office. An assistant contacted me, reiterated the cooperative bank's position, and said it will take about 6 to 8 weeks for the Ombudsman to come back to you with a decision. Are you happy with that? I said yes. Ultimately, the Ombudsman came back with a provisional decision that was communicated to myself and the cooperative bank, saying that if we had no objections in 14 days, that would be his final decision, and upheld the fact that I had both been treated unfairly and in an age discriminatory way by the cooperative bank.
Well, I mean, just to say that Co-op has responded to that. It says it's since changed its policy, extended its maximum age limit for mortgage repayment, and has said it apologises to you, Mr. Day, that it was unable to resolve this original complaint to your satisfaction. So that's just, you know, we need to give right of reply to the Co-op.
Yeah,
but you've resolved that. I suppose, Liam, we hear a story like Peter's, and perhaps, I think it'd be fair to say, we're not so surprised that, you know, the older you are, this is what we tend to think, the older you are, the more discrimination you face. But you're seeing things and going to tell us about things from a different end.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was talking about to my friends that was going to be appearing on BBC Breakfast, they said, why are you talking about age discrimination? You're simply not old enough. But I think the age discrimination I experienced is probably quite similar to a lot of other young people. So growing up at school, if we went to a supermarket, for example, we'd be told, leave your bags at the door, you might be here to cause a bit of mischief. And if there was big groups of us perhaps entering other premises or cafes, it became clear that perhaps owners were a bit more reluctant to serve you because you're slightly younger. But I think the biggest example of age discrimination in place now is the new living wage, and that doesn't apply to people until the age of 25. So even with the increase in the national minimum wage due to come in October for those workers up to the age of 24, you're losing probably about £450 per year simply based on your age. And it's completely arbitrary. It isn't based on anything other than your age. And I know there's arguments that, well, people need to have experience before they get paid the full amount, but people need to live as well. And if they don't have enough money to live on, they can't get that experience in the first place.
It sort of chimes with what Peter's saying, because I suppose from Peter's point of view, Liam, it was a case that they looked at your number, your age, rather than looking at your personal experience. And I suppose that happens at the other end of the scale as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there's other examples of when young people want to access the housing market, for example. There's that perception that, oh, young people aren't fully aware of the rights and responsibilities that they have. And sometimes young people can find themselves in quite challenging situations because they aren't made fully aware of the rights that they do have. And I think there's some services that perhaps do really exploit that to their advantage.
OK, thanks very much for giving us special points of view. We're going to be talking to Roxanne Pallett, who's been an activist for part of this, and an age ambassador as well later in the programme. Thank you both very much.
Thank you. Lovely to see you.